A 150-meter steel crabber leaves Alaska's coast behind, heading into the Bering Sea where giant king crabs still roam. Stacks of steel pots line the deck, each one a cage designed to trap massive red king crab on the seafloor. Funnel openings and a bait box inside turn this heavy frame into a one-way door for giant king crab. Crews move through coils of rope and steel, checking every shackle before the gear touches cold Bering Sea water. Tubs of chopped bait fill the air with scent, the lure that will pull giant red king crab out from hiding. Bait boxes are packed heavy, turning each cage into a single, powerful scent source spread along the bottom.
Pots clip one by one onto the ground line, forming long strings that will crawl across the seabed contours.
At the stern, baited pots stack on the ramp, waiting for a signal to leave steel and join the sea. The captain relies on paper charts and memory, tracing depth lines where king crab historically crowd the bottom.
On deck, there is one last check-in before thousands of kilograms of gear vanish over the stern into darkness.
A buoy and anchor go first, staking the starting point for an invisible line of steel across the seafloor. The first baited cage leaves the ramp, beginning a pattern that will march pot by pot into the deep. Buoys paint a dotted line behind the ship, each float marking where heavy crab pots are dropping through the column. Below the surface, steel cages fall in sequence, dropping toward a bottom no one aboard will ever actually see. The first pot thumps into silt and rock, bait scent already bleeding slowly into the still cold water. Soon an entire string lies across the slope, a repeating grid of bait boxes and steel along the seabed.
Inside each cage, bait waits quietly, its scent the only invitation for whatever crawls out of the gloom.
On the bottom, there is only silt, rock, and faint current carrying smell much farther than any human can see. Out of the haze, spined shells and long legs appear, giant red king crab homing in on the scent trail. One massive crab pauses at the funnel, claws testing the mesh as it decides whether the bait is worth the risk. Step by step, it pulls itself through, committing its bulk to a space far easier to enter than escape. Inside, it clamps onto bait, shell wedged against mesh in a position almost impossible to back out of.
Along the line, trap after trap begins to fill, some cages already crowded with powerful crabs stacked on top of each other.
In crowded pots, bigger crabs muscle smaller ones aside, claiming the closest seat to the shrinking mound of bait. As hours pass, more crabs arrive, turning scattered individuals into dense pockets of spined shells along the gear.
On the surface, only buoy lines hint at what might be happening 60 fathoms below in the darkness. While steel soaks, men stay busy, clearing lines and preparing for the moment the hauler starts turning again.
Wind builds across the grounds, turning flat swells into sharp chop that makes every haul more dangerous.
On bottom, the string is heavy with life, steel boxes crammed with claws and legs waiting for the pull of rope.
When soak time ends, the crabber swings back toward its own floating markers, ready to see if the gamble paid off.
At the rail, the pot hauler wakes up, the machine that will lift tons of steel and crab through rough water. A buoy jerks hard, the line cutting a clean angle into the depths where the crab-laden pots now sit.
A crewman locks the line into the hauler, trading raw muscle for controlled hydraulic pull from the bottom. The hauler grinds slowly, sending each pull of steel and rope straight into the shoulders of the men guiding it. Where the line comes up, water boils, marking where tons of gear are separating from the seafloor below.
Steel erupts from the water and slams onto the ramp, the first test of whether these grounds are still alive.
Through the mesh, big spined carapaces and long legs crowd the frame, a clear sign the bet hit right.
The door swings and heavy crabs spill out,
their legs scraping steel as the crew moves them to the table.
Each crab is measured against the gauge, size deciding whether it rides ashore or returns to the seafloor.
Short or damaged crabs go back overboard, insurance that the stock can rebuild between short seasons.
Pot after pot comes over the ramp, some almost bare, others laced with crimson shells and tangled legs. The table fills with living red armor, every crab a combination of weight, claw size, and market price.
Crews grab crabs at the right joint, keeping claws away from flesh as they lower each giant into sloshing bins.
Not every pot is crowded. Some hold only one supersized crab that outweighs several smaller animals combined.
Bins along the rail begin to fill with red shells, each one a temporary holding pen before the crabs move below.
Seas build as the hauls continue, each pot now fighting against both gravity and the rising chop.
Even with hydraulics, each lift pounds through harness straps and joints, wearing down arms long before the season ends.
Steel on steel impacts shake the ramp, small reminders of how much weight is moving every minute of the haul.
Empty cages are not wasted. They are reloaded immediately, ready to be dropped again on the next productive contour. As soon as one string is hauled and emptied, it is reborn beside the rail, baited and ready for another drop. High-value crabs disappear through a hatch, trading open air for controlled seawater inside the vessel.
In the live well, layers of crimson shells crouch on the bottom, kept moving and oxygenated by constant flow.
Up close, thick legs and claws shift against one another, the crabs conserving energy in tight, crowded quarters. The crew works in muscle memory, repeating the same motions until the final trap of the string clears the sea. Snow starts to drift across the gear, another reminder that crab seasons happen on winter's edge, not summer's comfort.
Shells are checked for cracks and missing legs, because buyers pay more for crabs that arrive whole and strong.
Another string climbs from the bottom, proving this fishery runs on repetition, strength, and a narrow weather window.
Clouds sag closer to the water, building a seaway that will test both balance and gear through the rest of the haul.
Ice, rope, and moving shell turn the deck into a hazard course. One more wrist folded into the paycheck.
After the first cycle, steel is stacked, tanks are loaded, and the crew finally knows this trip will count.
Morning light shows rows of buoys rocking in chop, each one hiding heavy crab gear somewhere below.
On deck, the same rhythm repeats, rebaited pots lining the rail as the crew prepares for another full set.
Steel cages pour over the stern in a controlled cascade, rebuilding a field of traps on untouched ground.
On deeper contour lines, fresh pots land quietly, staking new real estate in the cold dark of the seafloor. Crabs march toward the scent, long legs lifting through silt as they close in on the hidden bait source. One oversized crab squeezes through the funnel, sacrificing freedom for a front row seat at the bait box.
Soon, whole stretches of gear are alive with motion, steel frames packed with red shells piled layer upon layer.
Weather continues to rise, turning every buoy pick into a balance test at the rail.
Before the hauler starts again, gear and bodies are checked, because mistakes in this sea can be permanent.
The line snaps tight, broadcasting the kind of weight that means either a jackpot of crab or gear snagged on rock.
One pot hits harder than the rest, steel flexing under the load as it rides the ramp toward the deck. Inside, there is almost no empty space, only layers of legs and spined shells pressing against every surface.
Hands fly as the crew sorts quickly, dividing keepers from releases while the next pot climbs toward daylight. Females and shorts are returned immediately, investment in a stock that must survive short, intense seasons.
Bins along the rail swell with red color,
each one a moving pile of value that still has to make it ashore alive.
Below deck, live wells show what the season is given. Tanks packed with crab waiting for their final transit.
In dim light, crabs shuffle and settle, conserving strength for whatever journey still lies ahead of them. As another string finishes, both steel and shell pile up, proof that the captain picked his lines well.
Between pulls, hoses clear the deck, keeping the work area safe, even as more crab waits at their feet.
Each crab is checked again, its condition determining whether it rides in a premium tank or gets culled out.
By evening, most strings have cycled, the deck showing only neat stacks of steel and bins heavy with crab.
At last, the bow swings toward land, gear hauled and tanks full enough to justify the hard push home. Night swallows the horizon, leaving only navigation lights and engine thrum as company across the dark water.
In the mess, men eat fast, trading stories and silence, while the hull carries their catch closer to market. Sleep comes in crowded bunks and short bursts, measured in miles left to steam rather than hours on a clock.
Dawn reveals breakwaters and mountains, proof that the trip's offshore risks have finally paid their way home.
The hull kisses concrete gently, shifting the operation from ocean motion to the hard, flat surface of the dock.
Cranes lift bins full of moving shells, trading the vessel's steel deck for the echoing space of the dock. Dock crews move each crab into shore tanks, extending its life long enough to reach buyers far beyond Alaska.
In the holding facility, the catch gathers in concrete rooms, thousands of crabs resting before their next journey. Lot numbers and harvest dates turn piles of shell into traceable product, accountable from seafloor to plate.
At auction, buyers study live crabs in display tanks, weighing shell condition against the prices they can command.
One buyer checks leg thickness and heft before signaling his bid, committing to thousands of dollars in shell.
In the packing room, cooked crab sections slide into boxes, each shell a tightly package of pure white meat.
Labels lock in the story, listing species, origin, and date for regulators, chefs, and customers alike. Refrigerated trucks become the next link, taking boxed crab from the cold dock to distant distribution hubs.
Inside the trailer, straps and chilled air hold the product steady, protecting quality against bumps and distance.
At a city hub, the catch joins other cold cargo, waiting only hours before restaurants claim their share. In a high-end kitchen, boxes open to reveal neatly arranged leg clusters, straight from the Bering Sea grounds.
Chefs check fullness at each cut, looking for legs packed with meat rather than hollow shells.
Leg clusters steam briefly, bringing chilled meat back to serving temperature without sacrificing texture.
A single cut frees a solid piece of white meat, the same flavor that drove crews into winter seas.
On clean white plates, crab becomes a centerpiece, surrounded by simple sides that do not distract from the shellfish.
The Alaskan king crab for you both. It looks absolutely stunning. Thank you.
A crack of shell and a dip in butter turn months of planning and risk into a single perfect bite.
I'm telling you, it was bigger than the platter.
Yeah.
Look at this piece right here.
By late service, only a few portions remain, the evening's demand nearly emptying the day's allocation.
The dining room returns to quiet, hiding the Dale's connection to rough seas and steel decks. Back at the dock, the crabber rests, its gear lashed down after a trip that pushed crew and steel hard. In the wheelhouse, the captain studies notes and charts, already weighing what this season means for the next. Pots and lines sit in neat stacks, silent now but ready to return to work when the season opens again.
Tanks lie empty and scrubbed, their recent cargo now scattered between warehouses, trucks, and restaurant kitchens. The harbor rests too, big steel hulls lined up in rows, each waiting for the next narrow window of opportunity.
Offshore, the crab grounds look empty again, their traps gone but their populations still shifting in the dark.
When conditions and quotas align, the same hull heads back out, repeating a cycle as old as the fishery itself.
A hand on cold steel is a quiet reminder that this work belongs as much to people as to profit sheets.
The bow climbs and falls in rhythm, pushing the crew once more toward hidden red shells on the seafloor.
Against the scale of the Bering Sea, even 150 meters of steel looks fragile and small.
The hunt for giant king crab pauses, but the cold seafloor remains, waiting quietly for the next season to begin.